welcome to Crit Role Conspiracies, the show where we discuss all of the wild theories about Campaign 3 of Critical Role. Today we're talking about Episode 3 and whew, it was a doozy. Before we jump into this video, here is the obligatory spoiler warning. This video contains spoilers for Campaign 3 but also for Campaign 1 because there are some connections that we're going to talk about. By the way, I have a special Crit Role Conspiracies channel in my Discord server where we talk all about our ideas and theories for Campaign 3, so if you want to join, there's a link in the description. I would love to see you there. We are going to talk about the end of that episode, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Firstly, I want to talk about Laudna. Laudna. Who are you? Are you chipper, quirky, creepy goth? Now, last episode, it was pretty much confirmed that Laudna is a Hollow One. Hollow One is an optional character feature from the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount book, and it states that Hollow Ones are beings whose souls have left for the afterlife, but their body remains, sort of holds on to a fragment of the person who they were before they died. The reason that we know Laudna is most likely a Hollow One is because she used the feature Unsettling Presence, which is only available to Hollow Ones. Now the interesting thing here is that Laudna has said she is from Whitestone. The Explorer's Guide to Wildemount states that Hollow Ones come from the eastern coast of Xhorhas, and so what is Laudna doing as a Hollow One in Tal'Dorei? Delilah Briarwood herself was from Wildemount, so potentially there is a connection there, but it's all still a little bit of a mystery. And of course, Matt has a tendency to like to homebrew things for his characters and to kind of do things in ways that surprise us, so I'm sure there's going to be some kind of a twist coming that we haven't seen yet. This also does explain Laudna's age, so she described herself as a youngish woman and the character art shows a young woman, but we know that it's been at least 40 years since she left Whitestone because she left before Vox Machina came back and dealt with the Briarwoods. So Hollow Ones are ageless, they don't age anymore, so clearly she sort of stopped at one point and that's where she is, and that explains this kind of 40-year gap that we know exists. There are two main theories that I've seen about Laudna floating around Reddit and Twitter, and even in the comments of my last video. For the first one, let's cast our minds back a little to Campaign 1, when Vox Machina entered Whitestone for the first time after Percy had left. They arrived to find bodies hanging from the Sun Tree, which is a giant tree in the middle of Whitestone, and these bodies had been dressed and kind of made up to look like the members of Vox Machina. It was a deeply unsettling and horrible moment, and I think it really affected both the characters but also the cast. It kind of showed just how evil the Briarwoods were and the lengths that they were willing to go to retain their hold of power. So this first theory is that Laudna is the woman who was killed and dressed up to look like Vex, and that somehow she became a Hollow One and she left Whitestone and she never found out about what actually happened there after she left. The second theory is that Laudna is somehow related to Percy or to the Durollers. She has that dark hair with a streak of white, which is kind of like a bit of an aesthetic of the Durollers. It was like a feature of Percy's sister Cassandra. And there are just those kind of like creepy goth Whitestone vibes. The theory is that Laudna was a part of the Durollo family, perhaps one who was killed during the takeover of Whitestone. It's been thrown out that she could be Percy's mother, or a sister, or maybe just like a long-lost cousin. Now, I think both of these theories are really fun and very dramatic and would make critters pretty happy because it's always fun to have those connections to prior characters. Personally though, I think it might be a little bit too on the nose. The big issue that I have with Laudna being very closely connected to the Durollos is that if we're ever going to see an exploration of her backstory, we could see the party going to Whitestone. Like sure, currently they're on Marquette, but when they're higher levels, they could have the opportunity to jump around. Like we saw in Campaign 2, they were just sort of jumping around like quite a lot towards the end there. So it's not inconceivable that they could go to Whitestone to kind of pursue this part of Laudna's past. And in which case, if they're going to reach out to the Durollos and kind of seek that connection, then Taliesin is going to have to roleplay two characters at once again. And I just don't know if they would set it up that would happen. And equally, it would feel very unsatisfying if we don't dig into Laudna's backstory, if we don't kind of discover those connections. These are all very experienced professional role players who clearly put things in their story for the exact purpose of like pulling it out and having a look and exploring it. And so if she put something in her backstory that was going to be complicated to explore, I just don't know if she would. But, you know, even being connected to Whitestone is a pretty close connection, and they did say they were going to mix things up a lot this year, and they told us to expect the unexpected. So I'm willing to be proven wrong. I'm really, really interested to see how it pans out. I'm so interested in Laudna. I think at the moment she's my favorite character because there's just so much going on there, and the way Marisha is roleplaying her is just extremely endearing and charming, and also incredibly creepy. Anytime she discusses like the way she's using her powers when they're in combat, I just like bleh. One more theory about Laudna before we move on, which comes from Tib21, who I believe had another great theory I looked at last week, is that Laudna's patron is Torag, the Crawling King. They make the connection that Torag's symbol is kind of like 3 spindly arms, which really goes with the way Marisha has been talking about Laudna's body and the way she holds her body, and she's like constantly doing this with her hands and being all spindly. She also has a chisel which is kind of holding up her bun, and because the Crawling King is said to have like carved out pathways through the Underdark, and because Torag kind of crawls through the earth carving out these pathways and like burrowing through stone, it's quite a fitting accessory to have if Torag is your patron. In this episode, we got a little bit more information about Ashton. So we've seen in the character art that Ashton has the symbol of the clasp on their pant leg. So we already assumed that there's going to be some kind of connection there. In this episode, Ashton mentions that they have several debts that they need to work off and several favors that are owed, and they also mentioned a particular person. They asked Milo at the end of the episode, has she come around? Don't tell her anything about it. It makes me wonder if this is Ashton's, like, what do you call it? Like a handler or something for the class, like making sure that they're paying their debts. It does seem like Ashton is very much motivated by money, so it could be trying to pay off some kind of debt to the class, perhaps got involved in something, got over their head. I'm interested to find out who this mysterious she is and what kind of trouble Ashton is going to get into when inevitably things don't quite work out. It's also interesting that Ashton didn't want this person to find out that they are working for Lord Esteros. And since Lord Esteros has put himself forward as someone who is kind of trying to fight corruption and bad guys, that there clearly could be a conflict of interest between working for the clasp and being in debt to the clasp and also working for Lord Esteros. So I love anytime there's the potential for that little bit of conflict. Spaterius? Hope I got that right on Reddit. Actually brought up a really great point in that Lord Esteros specifically said that nobody was allowed to find out that the group were working for him. And then the first thing that Ashton does is go to their friend and say, hey, can you look into this Lord Esteros person? I've picked up a new job. I want to find out more about him. So it's pretty plausible that Milo is going to be investigating and asking around about Lord Esteros, and word is either going to get back to Lord Esteros, who's not going to be happy, or word is going to get around to the enemies of Lord Esteros, who are going to come and cause some trouble. I do love Ashton, but yeah, that was maybe a little bit of a silly choice. All right, it is time to get into it. We're going to talk about the ending of this episode. As I said in the last video, I didn't expect Bertrand to stick around. I believed he was a temporary character for Travis, and from this episode, we have confirmed that that is true. Matt Mercer actually explained this on Twitter, saying that Travis wanted his character to be introduced a little bit later, but Matt didn't want Travis to have to sit out the first few sessions, so they decided to bring Bertrand in as kind of a character to set the scene. Travis didn't know when Bertrand was going to meet a grim end, but the plan was all along for Bertrand to die off. And I knew that this was going to happen, but I really didn't expect it to happen so soon, and I didn't expect to feel so sad about it. Bertrand really grew on me in this episode. I thought he was very endearing, even though, you know, we know obviously he has done some pretty horrible things in the past. The way Travis roleplayed him was just very fun and charming, and just the way he's like throwing his gold around, and I think it is that like devil may care attitude that was very charming. And obviously Travis was leaving a lot of space for Matt to be able to come in and finish him off. I'm feeling very confident in the theory that Travis's character is the person that Orym is looking for, and I feel even more confident in this because at one point Laudna asked Orym, are you looking for a goodie or a baddie, a good witch or a bad witch? And Orym starts to reply good, before he's kind of cut off. So He's confirmed that he's looking for a good character, so we would hope that Travis's character is going to be a good character. And the anger just does sound like a very cool nickname that Travis would give a character. So I'm really intrigued to see if Travis is going to be playing next week or if he's going to be sitting out, because I guess it depends on how quickly Orym is going to find this person if this is the character that Travis is playing. What do you think? What character do you think Travis is going to be playing? Put some comments down below. I've seen some people floating around the idea of playing a rogue, because we don't have a rogue in the party yet, or potentially another spellcaster. Yeah, I'm excited to see. And just how narratively perfect was it that Matt rolled a natural 20. It just felt like this death was planned, you know, it was going to happen, but it really felt like the dice were there in that story as well. And I think that's just what I love about D&D. It was also just an incredible scene because I really loved how Matt split kind of the focus between Imogen having this terrifying vision and Bertrand kind of walking into the Red Tempest as he died. I'm so intrigued to find out what it is that Imogen is running from. And I also just loved that whole scene of her with her horse and, you know, out on the prairie. I think in the next episode, we're going to see the team going after this dwarf again, because they're going to have a lot of motivation to now that Bertrand has died. I feel like this is going to be a nemesis that's going to stick around for a while, and is probably going to be kind of the purpose of this next arc, is finding this dwarf. I'm curious to see how all the characters are going to react when they find out Bertrand has died. I don't know how they're going to find him because he's just in an alleyway, but he is near the bar where they were, so it probably won't be too difficult to find him. Long live Bertrand. I actually really enjoyed him, and I am sad that he's gone, but I'm very excited to see what character Travis is going to be playing next. Well, that's it for me this week. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, please put all of your theories and ideas in the comments below, or you can also join my Discord, where I have a Crit Role Conspiracies channel where we all talk about our impressions and our ideas. You can also tweet your ideas at me at Luboffin. All of my links are down there, and I'll see you next time. Bye!